All right, we're back here, season 6. We're still rolling strong here in the 6th year of the podcast, which again, just you've heard me say it a few times already. It's just quite amazing to me. It doesn't happen without you guys and gals here pressing play and listening to the podcast on a weekly basis. And just so humbled, so grateful for you being here today. Excited about today's guest. I probably should, I don't do this very often, but I should probably introduce myself. Mike Cunningham. I'm officially the National Business Development Manager here at Gill Athletics, which just, it's a fancy title for I'm the podcast guy. I get to host this and do a lot of fun things, and truly grateful for that. So let's get into it today. If you're a regular, if you've listened to any of our episodes here, our goal is to uplift and honor coaches from around the country, around the world. And we do that. We've had some amazing coaches. We had one just last week. We'll have another one next week. And then from time to time, we like to bring you our dealer partners. So we have the best dealer network out there. And today we've got one of the best dealers out there. And we're going to talk about, well, what the heck does that even mean? And why might you look at buying a track equipment from this company and maybe this person specifically? So let's hop into it and figure it all out. So help me welcome from VS Venue Springfield, VS Athletics. Usually I say the wise, the wonderful, and that holds true, but I'm going to call him the man, the myth, and you're going to find out why. Help me welcome Mr. Matt Farmer. Matt, how are you, sir?
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
I've never given an introduction that long for you. Normally it's like, yeah, this is Matt. Talk to him. Matt, man, thanks so much for being here, man. I say this to all of our track coaches, and this holds true for guys like you as well. One of the most valuable things that you can give me is your time. I know you're busy. There's hopefully you have your phone on silence. I didn't say that before we hit record because I know it's nonstop with you, and
Yes,
and
sir.
that's a lot of part of the fun of the job as well. So excited for that. So appreciate your time, Matt. Talk to us a little bit. I talk about dealers and dealer partners and VS Athletics and Gill Athletics, and sometimes and completely understand why a coach may think this. They think of like VS Athletics and Gill Athletics like, oh, they're competitors, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. Talk to us a little bit about what you do as a dealer and as a salesman. Just talk about kind of like that side of it as it relates to Gill and track equipment, etc.
Sure. I'm the national sales manager at VS Athletics. And so essentially that means I'm in charge of kind of picking out spots in the country where we want to be a little bit more active and where there's more population base and finding people that want to sell for us in those areas and then recruiting them to come and work for us. Essentially, my day is filled with talking to coaches, emailing, texting, calling, school visits, flying around the country if somebody's getting a new facility and just going and talking to them and selling our products, your products, and just trying to make the world a happier place as far as track and field is concerned.
Making the world a happier place. I like that. That's pretty good. That's you do a good job of that actually. I really like that a lot. Well, they customers, coaches, athletic directors have a lot of options out there. I like to think that someone who is in the sport, maybe been involved in the sport, different aspects, whether it's coaching, athlete, things like that, might have more to give to a coach as far as experience and things like that. So let's talk about your experience. Where does I usually say, like, assuming you did track, I know a little bit here that we did some track. Talk to us about track for you, man, because and start maybe from the beginning because I know it starts before you even. So where does track start for Matt
Sure.
Farmer?
So let's talk about the VS side of this first. We talk about there's a lot of Johnny come latelys in our business, and nobody's as quite as authentic as as Gill Athletics. Lost my little headset there. Nobody's got as much as Gill, right? You've been around for centuries. We started in 1984. The '84 Olympics got awarded to LA, and our founder Brian Springer was an official in the LA area and a track and field official, and they needed somebody to basically supply with equipment, and there were not a heck of a lot of options as it related to Southern California.
Right.
And so Brian got to work and said, okay, well, we can figure this out. And so that's kind of how we started, was in '84 or the
Wow.
pre-planning stages of the '84 Olympics.
Mhm.
And then I joined on in 1992 after I graduated from college, just answering phones and packing boxes and being a general kind of they say you start from the bottom and work your way up, and that's my life story. It's been that from the get go. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
basic story of VS and Springco. Basically, what happened? Springco was selling equipment, and Venue Sports was a uniform and shoe supplier here in Southern California, in the northern part of Southern California, and we merged companies and basically changed the name and made it into VS, like you had said when you introed me,
Yeah.
Venue Springco. So that's kind of the genesis of how this thing got going from our dealer side of it. My story is we're a lifelong, many decades, many generations track and field company. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was the
But
state champ in
by the
Minnesota.
By the way, I love that little slip that you had there. You're going into your family, which absolutely, and this is where we continue to go here. But you said we're a lifelong track company. You meant family, but I
Ah,
love how the
well, this
family
is true.
company track.
It
Yeah,
is a
yeah. I
business.
thought that was so funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Keep
is a
going. Sorry.
business. No, it's uh, the family is definitely a track and field family. My gramps, my dad's dad was the state champ in Minnesota in high school in the shot and the high jump,
No
and then
way.
he ended up being a football player at the University of Minnesota. He was the running back on the freshman team. And I'm not quite sure the dynamic there, but it was either in 1939 or 1940. They won the national title 2 years in a row. University of Minnesota did in 40 and 41. So he was on the freshman team one of those years and was kind of going to work his way into being the A or B starting running back on the team the next year, and then got hurt in a hunting accident. And this basically his career was over, and then he became an insurance salesman and a dad and moved on. But he was the start of kind of the track and field thing. And then my dad was, geez, he was the 1961 NCAA 440-yard hurdle champion. Ran 50.8. He's going to kill me if that's wrong, but something along those lines on dirt. He won it at the Penn Relay Stadium back there at the University of Pennsylvania, and that was back basically Occidental College was where he ran, and they
Okay.
were a pretty dominant track and field powerhouse back in those days, at the Division I level. And then he went on to coach, and he coached at his alma mater, Occidental, and then he got the call from the University of Michigan to start their cross country program. And so we left when I was a little guy, probably two, in the early 70s, and he went back there and he coached every running event at the University of Michigan. So sprinters through cross country and the hurdles and relays. And pretty good job. Didn't necessarily get along with the higher ups, and started looking for greener pastures about 3 4 years in, and University of Washington came calling. And so then he did the same job at the University of Washington, coached all the sprints, relays, hurdles, and distance stuff for the UW. And then after about 9 years of that, he got the head coaching job at San Diego State. So he kept improving our weather, I like to say, as I got older. So he was at San Diego State until after I left for college, and then he went to Gustavus Adolphus and loved the Division III experience. He really enjoyed the D3 kids from the standpoint of there wasn't a daily discussion about my scholarship money. It was I'm here because I love the sport, and it really was a kind of a nice bookend to his coaching career at the end of it. And then he ended his career back at Occidental as the athletic director. So instead of being fired, he got to hire and fire. So it was a great way to end for him. And he's enjoying his retirement now, about 30 miles south of me.
I knew your dad was a big time athlete.
Hmm.
I don't know that I knew he was coached for such a long time. I knew he was a coach, but I for some reason in my head had him as Southern California and club and high school, being involved. But I didn't know basically starting the program at University of Michigan, going to Washington, San Diego. That's really incredible. What was it like growing up as it's something to grow up as an athlete, and we certainly talk about your athleticism as well here in a little bit. But it's another thing to grow up as a coach's son. I mean, you're seeing the things that he's I'm gonna call it going through, as all of our coaches go through in their profession. You're seeing it firsthand when he's coming home and when he's traveling and things like that. What was it like growing up a coach's kid in this sport?
It's a great experience. I mean, all of my birthdays, my birthday recollections are we would go to the University of Washington, bring 9 of your buddies, and we'd play 5-on-5 basketball in the arena. And then when we were done playing
Oh, that's
basketball,
cool.
we'd get out into Husky Stadium and they'd water the field down. And we'd play tackle football on the AstroTurf out there in the rain. And then we'd get in rowing boats and go row on Lake Washington. It's just a great experience. And my basically how I got into kind of what it is that I do is I would ride on the buses. I was that annoying little kid who would walk up and down the aisles and talk to each of the guys about, and I'd make predictions. I'd have a sheet and I would say, okay, Mike Cunningham, today you're long jumping. I think you're going to go 23.7 and you're going to triple jump 48 feet. And that would either be a good thing or a bad thing. And they'd
Yeah.
try to reach at you. And, I'd make predictions and they were always pretty darn close. Like people would always kind of crack up. I've had people for years come back to me and say, hey, I hated your predictions, but it was kind of funny to see how close you were on all that stuff. And so I loved growing up as a coach's kid. There wasn't enough, he wasn't home as much as I would have loved, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just part and parcel with being a coach is you're gone on the weekend. So he didn't get to see a lot of my sports stuff,
Yeah.
but every chance he had, he was there.
Did you grow up knowing? Sometimes we take it for granted of what our fathers or family members do because we see them all the time, so we know about track or records and things like that. But did you know how good of an athlete he was growing up? Like as you're growing up, did you realize like, oh wow, my dad was a stud, or was it just like, oh yeah, he was good, he did track, and he's a coach.
Mike, really? I mean, he was the two-time California state champ in the 400 meters or 440 yards back then. And he ran like 48 flat in high school on dirt. He was very good in the 59. I think it was 59.60 was when he won. And being a California kid growing up, that's all you heard everywhere you went. They'd look at the name and go, "You Dixon's kid?" Yeah, yeah. Oh, your dad was this. I can remember when I watched him run at the
Yeah,
stadium at Edwards Stadium at Berkeley, and he was amazing. And he was really good. He won the 180 lows back then. They had the 180 lows.
yeah.
Kind of cool. 5 hurdles, just a
I'll say,
basic sprint with little teeny hurdles in the
yeah,
way. It was a
bring
great
that
little
back.
race.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was entertaining. So yeah, so the answer to your question is yes, I knew all about how terrific an athlete he was, and that stuff was all over the house. All of his. My
Mhm.
mom was an amazing uh, keepsake person, and so I
Oh,
mean
cool.
medals and ribbons and pictures and just memorabilia was. Our house was a really tacky guys sports bar growing up.
So how does Matt get into track? And did you try to do other sports, or was it like, yeah, I'm Dixon's kid, so I'm gonna do track?
Yeah, I kind of realized early on that I enjoyed the fun stuff, the high jumping and the throwing the discus and the things that weren't as painful as just picking out the 400 and trying to do what he did. That's not I don't think that's I was probably maybe a little bit too smart to say, okay, I'm going to be good at that kind of stuff. The high jumping was fun because you're jumping around on a high jump pit, and that was a great time. And so that was always kind of where I thought my bread was going to get buttered, and that's what I was in high school was a high jumper, long jumper, triple jumper type. And I dabbled with the decathlon. Kind of playing with it. I think I did my first one when I was about 12, and we just would do them all in one day. I'd go to work with my dad in the summertime, and I'd say I'm going out to the track, and I just do one with my buddies, and
Wow.
kind of just get things going, and you learn. And then I learned as I got older, I'm not really good enough at any one of these things. I better just do them all average, and then be able to make a little bit of a name.
No pressure to do the long hurdles or even the open 400 because of dad?
No, not at all. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, none of that. I mean, he had mentioned to me you should try him a couple times, and I did run him once in college and fell in the 10th hurdle, the 400-meter hurdles. So I was done with that, and I think that was probably my senior year of college. It was kind of after things were just winding down, and it was just kind of a fun little deal up in Santa Barbara. Um, but there was always um, the being around track. When we were at Occidental, my dad loves to tell the story, and it's 99% factual. He had looked through. You remember how they used to keep age group world records? So they'd have the 5-year-old long jump record, and
Right.
there used to be. So my dad assessed the records and thought that there was a chance for me in the 1-year-old 100-yard dash.
Shut up.
So he lined the track with his team and ready, set, go. And I ran down and I think the American record was like 26.6 or something, and I ran 26.2 the first time. And people were going crazy. And I, of course, said, I want to do it again. I want to do it again. And he said, I'm running twice as fast the second time. And I just made a left turn 90 degrees straight into the middle of the field. He said,
You were one,
so,
of
yeah.
course.
So I held the American record in a 1-year-old 100-yard dash for a little bit of time, I think. I don't know exactly how long. It was just kind of a funny little tidbit to add to the family lore.
That feels like something that shouldn't happen. There's enough parents out there that I feel like it'd be abusive 1-year-olds if we really got into it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's gotten to that point now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
This is
uh
much more of a fun thing.
I remember either like '08 or 12. at the Olympic trials out in Eugene, and there's those 2 days in between the super long weekends, and I had to go to the track to get something. And this is kind of my, it must have been '08 because it was kind of my first time ever in Eugene. And as I'm walking towards the stadium, I hear that now. I didn't know they did like fun runs and stuff in Eugene during that time at
Oh,
the track. And so as I'm walking to the track, I hear the announcer going, "All right, heat 7 of the 5-year-old 100 meter." And I was like, "Holy crap!" First of all, that there's
oh,
5-year-old dashes. They're on heat 7. Like, oh my God! And there was just, I walk in and there's just kids, kids everywhere, and they're just 100-meter dash, 100-meter dash. And I was like,
oh.
holy cow. It blew my, I remember actually calling my wife immediately and I was like, you're not going to believe it. I mean, this is just the most craziest thing in the world. I'm glad they started at 5. Maybe I think that was the youngest. They didn't go,
And I'm glad they started at 100 meters instead of 800s because
oh
those
my
kids
gosh.
never come back again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. We're probably apt to do that somewhere that we'll do that
Right.
at 8 years. Yeah, by 800 meters. Exactly. What were you, I love asking this question of our coaches that we have on the show of when they are going to college. Most, some, but not, but most not, aren't thinking that they're going to become a track coach. They're going to go to college to become a teacher. They're going to study business and maybe be an accountant or own their own business. What did you, when you were looking at going to college, what was the thought process? I assume you didn't go, I'm going to be a track sales equipment guy one day. You were like, oh, I'm going to be something, an astronaut. What were you thinking going into college?
So the vision, I knew early on what I wanted to do, and I was my sophomore year of high school. I was selected as the sports editor of the newspaper, our school paper, and I basically recruited a bunch of athletes to come work in the journalism department. I recruited a football player and a baseball and a basketball player, and so we had it wasn't your typical sports writer nerd writing these stories at our high school paper. It was something you wanted to talk to these guys and you wanted to be a part of it, and so I did that sports editor gig for 3 years, and I
Uh-huh.
went to school full well knowing that I wanted to be a sports writer. And in fact, my senior year of high school, this is a great story. Our creative writing teacher says he gave us handed out 3x5 cards to everybody in the class, and he says, "Okay, write down what I'm going to be doing in 10 years on the back of this card. Write your name on the front." Okay. So we went back to our 10-year reunion, and Mr.
Oh.
Andrews shows up and he passes out the cards to everybody. And I flip mine over and it says, "I'm going to be a sports writer for the Los Angeles Times," which had happened. Basically, when I graduated college, I decided I was going to try and write for them. And so I wrote all their high school track and cross country and some of their college track and cross
Is
country
that
over the next six
right?
years. Yeah. So I did that for 6 years, concurrently working for VS Athletics.
Yeah. So did you study like journalism or English? What did you end up
So
studying?
UC Irvine, where I went to school, didn't have a journalism program per
Mhm.
se. So I worked in the sports information office all through school.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of, so I was the announcer for the swim meets and an announcer for the sports, for the soccer, women's and men's soccer games. And then the post of that was making sure that all of that stuff was in the newspaper and calling the LA Times and the Orange County Register
Right,
and whoever we were playing. If it was playing Fresno State, you'd call, Fresno B and make sure that everything,
right.
or fax the information, the
Yeah.
box scores over. So that was kind of my intro into sports writing. Was I knew that's what I wanted to do, and got to announce a lot. And I ended up, after being a sports writer, I ended up going into the announcing thing, and I still do it to this day, and I
Yeah,
love it.
right. So what was the degree? What did you end up getting?
So
Like,
UC Irvine is a rather academic school, and you know me pretty well to know that that's not necessarily my strong suit. So I'm definitely a sports guy. So
yeah.
the easiest path through UC Irvine is through the social science department. So
Yep. Okay.
I was a sociology major.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool. You had ESPN dreams before,
Hmm.
really as ESPN was getting started kind of thing. That's
Hmm.
really cool.
Yeah.
That had to be pretty fun to see different kinds of sports and then have to try to figure out how to announce it or how to write it or how what stats are, because is there a more stat driven, maybe baseball, but is there a more stat driven sport than track and field? So, how soccer stats are calculated, things like that. That seems pretty cool.
It is. You would not believe how difficult it is to figure out who had an assist on a soccer goal for someone who's not a soccer player.
Sure, sure.
Because you're just watching the ball, you're not paying attention to, okay, Eric kicked it to Johnny, who kicked it in the goal. You're just going, oh, Johnny scored the goal.
Right.
So it was a learning curve for sure.
And then had to figure out and learn like, okay, so I have all this whatever, whether there's a soccer match or a track meet or whatnot. You had to figure out, well, what does the newspaper actually want or need because they can't print. the whole
Mhm.
enchilada. They have to, certain space allotted to each different event and stuff like this. You had to learn kind of like, okay, the LA Times likes this, the Fresno Bee likes this, the school newspaper likes this.
Sure. Yeah, there's a general rule of thumb as to what stats. Baseball, you want at bats, you want number of hits, RBIs, and runs scored, right? And then if you now it's got the column for your batting average on the backside. So there's a little bit that goes into it, but it was really an enjoyable job, and it honestly had sports writing paid a little bit more money, I probably would still be doing it. Like
Yeah,
I genuinely love getting paid to go to sporting events.
right.
But $50 a high school football game wasn't going to cut the mustard.
Yeah. I was a print journalism major actually in college as well,
Mm.
and thought that was going to be my route. And now, just with the status of newspapers, I'm kind of glad I didn't go that. Guys like you and I would have pivoted pretty quickly to a
Most.
digital side to it, or even an audio side to it. But it's funny to look back and think like, oh man, I really wanted to work for a newspaper. And it's like, man, there ain't many newspapers around anymore. I'm kind of glad I quote unquote dodge that bullet, if you will. So were you in college? Did you focus on the decathlon? Were you a multi?
Yeah, yeah. So I went to UC Irvine. I was a jumper in high school, and like I said, I dabbled in a few decathlons, and I think I was fifth in the Junior Olympics in the 17-18 division. So there was something there. But I was, like a 6'10" high jumper and a 23'10" long jumper, and I triple jump 47'10". So the jumps were kind of my thing. And 150-foot discus thrower. So there was a weird kind of skill set.
Yeah.
Um, Not much leg speed at all. I think I was
Okay.
like an 11.3 guy in high
Mm.
school, and I think that was by somebody's horribly timed hand time. Most of the time, it was 11.5 type. But again, with my dad's genetics, I knew that stuff was in there. It just hadn't ever we'd never really worked those muscles to kind of try to
Yeah.
figure out what they were. So I got into a great program at UC Irvine. They had a couple of 200 point decathletes when I was there as a freshman, and they were great training partners. They were 22-year-old men, and I was rolling in there as an 18-year-old, and a cocky little 18-year-old who just said, "Okay, I'm sticking with these guys no matter what it was," and it worked out great. I ended up that freshman year, I won the U.S. under now they call it the U20. It was back then it was called the TAC Junior
Right.
National Championship, and that was I think I scored 7,015 to win the U.S. Junior title with the big
Wow.
implements and the big hurdles. Now they've gone to the smaller stuff. So that was kind of cool. So I got to make the World Junior team and go to. Of course, my World Junior trip was to Canada. The one previous was in Greece, so the '86 team got to go to Greece. We got to go to Ontario, Canada.
Feels a little bit of a
So
letdown. Sure, sure.
so it was cool. I got to wear the gear. That was a incredibly humbling experience from both a mental and a wow, you got some work to do physical standpoint.
Hmm.
But it was great. I mean, I met a ton of people. I was on the team with a ton of Olympians, Quincy Watts. I mean, just a whole bunch of really great guys and gals. It was a really fun summer.
I mean, we talk about the really, really small club that it is to be an Olympian. I mean, it's a whole different, there's this many people. It's only a little bit bigger, by the way, but still extremely small, of people who have qualified for a Team USA team. Like you wore USA across your chest
Yeah,
for
it's
a
pretty fun
track
to think
meet.
about.
That's way cool, dude.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you think about it nowadays. You wouldn't sniff it now, the way the quality of track and field is now. But
Yeah,
back then,
yeah.
you know what? Hey, it's all relative, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, the
so I'll
quality
take it.
you don't have, this is a little bit like when people talk down a little bit about like a small school state champion. Like if there's six different divisions, it's like, oh, you were the small school. It's like, well, that kid didn't pick what schools or what school. They had the competition in front of them and beat them. So same thing with this. And you're right, track today is I used to coach and I'm like, I don't know that I could have coached as good as these guys and gals are doing today. It's unbelievable what is happening out there. But you back then, you didn't have anything to do with how the quality or not quality, whatever. Well, you had the people in front of you and you did it. That's so cool. How was that experience? Like, you kind of went around the country, living in Michigan, Washington. You're a Southern SoCal guy. We get very caught into, SoCal. So we know our people and America and blah, blah, blah. And we know there's other countries and things like that. But you went to a track meet where you competed against someone from Greece and maybe someone from Kenya and someone from Canada. But like you got to actually be on the track with like uh, for me at least, maybe it's because I've never, and never even thought I didn't have the genetics to be able to do anything like that. That seems like kind of like a worldview eye-opening experience of like, oh, there's a lot of people from a lot of different countries that are really good as well.
It was very eye opening. And my roommates were Mike Stoltz, who was a multiple time Olympian in the shot put, Kemi Kashmiri, who was the national high school record holder in the discus throw, and it was just an amazing experience to see the level of commitment that those guys had to everything they did and the intensity level. I mean, if you're playing cards, it was life or death. It made me think. I used to think going into that I was a pretty competitive person, but there's a whole nother level to that I couldn't quite get to as far as that was concerned. But it was very fun to get to compete against the Germans, and there were the Russians had a team back there. We're old enough
Yeah.
that it was actually Russia. Um, just an amazing experience.
Do you remember who the coaches were for that team?
Oh boy.
It's a while back. You get grace on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do. Guy Kochel is the name, was the
Okay.
head coach, and he was at Indiana State, Illinois State.
I was gonna say I know that
Um,
name somewhere. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Guy
Yeah.
Guy Kochel was the head coach, and he and I drove from. Oh, we went to the trials in '92 together, or in '88, the trials in Indy, and then drove over to get on the bus basically in Columbus, Ohio, and start meeting the team and having a great time together.
Wow. When you were doing this, you're involved in a lot of different aspects of sports. Your dad's a coach. I'm not really necessarily hearing that you were like nothing's told me yet that like, oh, I'm going to become a track coach as well. Not any thoughts of that at this kind of this 18 to 22-year-old time?
Sure. So there were times where I would coach. I coached high school, a few different high school teams. At Santa Margarita Catholic High School in South Orange County when we lived there, and then we moved out to kind of an eastern part of Southern California called Murrieta, and I was the head girls coach at Murrieta Valley High School, and for 9 years when we lived there, and then I coached when my kids went to Rancho Bernardo High School. I helped with the jumps and kind of multis jumps situation there. So yeah, I've always tried to stay involved in it, but I think now that my kids are out of it and in college and doing their own thing, the afternoons are for me, which is nice.
Yeah, no joke, right? But no thoughts of ever going into college track and field coaching?
Never once. No, never once. Um,
Never.
no, never.
Wow.
No, I saw what it did to my dad. I mean, the recruiting thing
Mhm.
was really hard on my dad. He would come home and he would make his phone calls, right? Call the kids, and he would have what he thought was the greatest kinship in the world. And then the next night he'd call the kid, and the kid would say, "Oh, I chose Arizona State," and it damaged him. I mean, I'm not going to tell you there weren't holes in our walls, and the plaster. It was pretty frustrating for him, and that kind of part of the business was tough.
Yeah.
And then, like I told you, he loved the D3 thing because there wasn't a lot of scholarship money, and having to haggle over money all the time.
Hmm.
I can't envision what it's like right now for these
Hmm.
college coaches with
Hmm.
NIL on top of scholarship stuff.
Right.
It's got to be a really. I don't envy their position at all.
Yeah, I tell people, I probably have told you this, we're getting close to, 300 episodes. So over 300 coaches we've had on the show from all levels, high school, D1, D2, 3, NAIA, JUCO, et cetera. And I always say the D3 coaches, they just have a bigger smile on their face. Everybody loves their
Hmm.
jobs and every job has their ups and downs. But the D3 coaches,
Hmm.
like I sometimes feel like, man, they have cracked the code. And I wonder, I coached for 10 years before I came to here. I'm like, I wonder if I would have figured it out by now. Like, would I have figured out, like, you know what, D3 is not bad. Maybe that's the route to go for coaching track. They seem
It is
to.
amazing. And the quality is getting so good at the D3 level. It's out of control.
Uh, yeah, there is no like, oh, go D3, and it don't matter if you're good or not. You'll do things. Go look at D3 nationals. And by the
Hmm.
way, 90% of those guys and gals, no slight to those athletes, but they were, I don't know if unrecruited is the right
Yeah.
term, but USC and Texas were not looking at those kids, right?
Hmm.
And they're eligible to transfer to USC's and Texas's now. I mean, it took what 10-0 to win the 120 point or 21 low or something to win. It's just it's ridiculous. It really
Yep.
is. There's no hiding in this sport anymore. That's for sure. You got to step up anywhere if you're gonna
Mhm.
win in this sport. So you graduate. Uh, Hit me with that timeline. I know you're coaching things. When did you start working for VS? After, like how long after college?
So VS basically VS or Springco at that point
Right.
morphed from being the equipment supplier, sort of the equipment supplier
Right. Right.
for the '84 Olympics, into he bought a bunch of AccuTrack timing systems. So he had probably 6 or 8 of those, and he had timers that would come in and pick up the gear, and we would time Long Beach State and Fullerton and UCLA and USC's meets and UC Irvine, my home school.
Right.
So I got to know the owner of the company, Brian Springer, because he was our finish line timer. So I would run across the finish line in the highs and run over to him and start look over the AccuTrack photo and say, "What did I run? What did I run?" And he finally, about the fourth meet in, said, "You're really aggressive. Do you want to come work for me when you're done doing this?" And I said,
Yeah.
"Sure, that sounds great." And it was I don't know if this is your interpretation when you first got to see the warehouse at Gill, but when I first walked into the warehouse at VS, I was in love. It was shot puts and stopwatches and just it was like a candy store. It was like I won the golden ticket, Willy Wonka.
Yeah, that's exactly how I describe it. When they, yeah, I knew track equipment from being a coach for so long, but I had no idea like what it means to make it and store it and what's that look like. And I remember they gave me the tour, and I literally that was the way I described it. I was like, oh, this is like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for track and field equipment. There's all these machines doing stuff, and there comes, spits out a pole vault pit or a pole vault pole or disc. It was just like I never thought you actually have to make this stuff. It really is cool and it's super interesting in my opinion. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
agree with that. So what did you
Mm-hmm.
start out with? You said you started out kind of in the factory, or I'm sorry, yeah, in the storage, like moving
So
stuff
yeah,
or
I
what?
start. There were basically two of us answering phones at that point. We were that small that there was Brian and there was a guy named Jeb Burgess who was our sales manager, and Jeb had an office with a door, and then Rich Benoit and I sat out and answered the phones. And Rich worked the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift because he was still competing. So he would get to leave right at 3, and then I'd come in and work 8:30 to 4:30, and then Jeb would have to answer the phones at 5 from 4:30 to 5 basically. And so we handled customer service, and then we'd go out and tape up boxes. And if we had 400 boxes going that day, I think actually the number was probably closer to 200 boxes would be a good day. We'd help the UPS guy put them on his truck, and so it was kind of everything from soup to nuts, kind of learning the
Yeah.
business. And it really helped me in my sales manager position that I'm in now, knowing costs and understanding freight. And yes, people, there is a such thing as freight. Amazon, don't
Amazon is diluted
I don't know
everybody.
how
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know how they're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times a day
No
you get
one in
asked,
our world is Amazon. All right, guys and gals. Yeah, just take that to
"Can I
rest.
have free freight?" I don't
Yeah.
I don't know how Amazon's doing it.
Yeah,
Well, I do.
exactly.
They're killing them by billions of packages a day.
Yeah,
Um,
and we
so
forget, by the way, with Amazon that we all upfront pay, what is it, 120, 130? I don't know what it is nowadays. So we all
right.
upfront pay 130. And remember, there's lots of people with memberships. You can never forget this. With memberships, there is a certain percentage, let's just say it's 20%, that don't use Amazon at all, but still pay that 120. It's just like your Netflix. There's plenty of people who have Netflix accounts who don't ever watch it. So that's just the free money
Yeah.
that they get. It's all supplementing the guys, like, because I'm married, I'm a super user. So I got, the guy comes to my house like 5 times a day for some reason. I'm like, "What are you doing,
Hey,
Andy?"
Mike.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. It's like, "Joe, what's up?" One time, Joe drove by and he was very sad because he didn't stop, and I was like, "Oh, wow, this I didn't know that was. I just thought we had a permanent stop." Anyway, yeah. So you got to learn a lot. You got to kind of thrown right into the frying pan, if you will.
For sure. Yeah, it was a great experience. I got a little frustrated with it, and I remember telling Brian, the owner of the company, that, hey, in the days when it's slow, why don't you let me kind of create my own job and start going to schools? Get out of here when we only need one person to answer the phone, and going and glad handing and going and make sure that we're top of mind for people so that when they do want to buy something, they go, "Oh yeah, Matt was just in here last week. Let me give him a buzz." And so he let me create that position, which was really kind of forward thinking on his part.
Yeah.
Um, and on top of, I was the sports writer for the Orange County edition of the LA Times, and so those coaches were calling wanting me to write about their kids and rank their team.
Mm.
And so that kind of created a little buzz for Springco as well. And so you kind of kill two birds with one stone there. So I wore a lot of hats in the early going, and really I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was wondering, you might have answered this question here because, like with a kid, an athlete goes and becomes a GA, to me, that's still a fork in the road where they can decide, yeah, I'm going to continue on and become a track coach, or I'll go use my degree and become whatever. When you first start a job, it's similar to that GA. Like you still have a, after 1 or 2 years, you could easily have left Springco and gone full-time sports writing. No one would have said anything because you didn't like X or Y or Z, but you got to kind of seems like you kind of liked the seeing how the this I hate this term, but I'm going to use it, how the sausage is made, and then also got to kind of explore your own avenue in the profession.
So I did kind of think the grass was greener, and I left for 2.5 years, and I went to
Oh,
work for Reebok. A guy named Peanut Harms, that you know,
yes.
was basically the national team guy. Well, actually, he's the West Coast team guy, and he said to me, his LA guy was just bombarded with just way too much work, and he said, "Hey, I need you to cover San Diego, Arizona, and Vegas." And I want you to sell nothing but high school basketball, football, and baseball. And then, you're a track guy, so we'll get you selling Reebok track spikes. At that point, that was just right when the Dan and Dave thing had started. Um, so it was kind of a cool. Well, it was on the tail end of the Dan and Dave thing, but they had a little bit of authenticity where it came to track and field. So
Right.
I left and did some college basketball and high school basketball, and pretty quickly realized the track's where your bread should be buttered. So I came sprinting back, and it made a lot more sense to be back here.
Was it more that you weren't a basketball or a baseball guy, or was it
Mm.
more that it was just shoes, or was it maybe it was more organized? And what I mean by that is, it's corporate, it's Reebok, those kind of things versus, a little bit more. You get to call your own shots a little bit more in the spring coast. What was it that was like, yeah, this isn't for me?
I think I just missed track and field.
Yeah,
I'm a track guy, and
right.
I we got away from it, and I love basketball games, but I'm not near as passionate about it as I am about going to a track meet. Um, and baseball even less so, and
Yeah.
football probably even less so as far as going to events. And it was a lot of having to call the equipment guy at the University of Hawaii and say, hey, your guy's wearing a pair of Nike shoes, he's supposed to be wearing Reebok, that's part of the contract. So you had to put a little bit of the heavy too.
Yeah.
Not my favorite part
Yeah.
of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd much rather just be everybody's friend and try to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense about the pull of track and field. We
Hmm.
when we're in it, we like to say, the great sport of track and field or how awesome it's the number one sport and things like that. But I think sometimes we still take it for granted, and sometimes we need that get away and like, oh wait, I miss it. I do want to get back over here. When I left coaching, my statement literally to myself was like, well, how can I get completely away from track and field and see if it still brings me back? And so, of course, I went to Vegas and played cards for a living. That was the farthest away from there is no track in cards, which that actually didn't hold
Hmm.
true because I met someone who's still very involved in track and field through that. But through that journey of that, it was like, I do miss being on the track, or I do miss the hurdles, or I do miss talking about splits and it's a unique sport, man. It really is, and it attracts a lot of great people. That's for sure.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
can't.
your thumb and forefingers are probably
Oh my
all
God,
healed up from moving hurdles up and down,
I
pushing the
didn't have.
buttons.
I didn't have fingerprints for a long time, bro. There's a lot of blood spilled, and it was all because I was just moving it up 30, 33, 36. You know it, you know it,
Yep.
you know it.
Yep.
So talk to us about, how long you've been there at Venue, and then and how long, or not how long. So how long, and then kind of the progression, because now you do a little bit different job. You do some of the same things, obviously. Maybe you're packing
Mhm.
less boxes today, hopefully, but you've progressed to where now you're overseeing people that were kind of you 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got a pretty good situation. Rich, my business partner, loves to be in the office, and he loves to function inside of square rooms. I cannot deal with that in the least. I need to be outside and on the go and kind of creating and do things off the cuff. And so we're pretty good business partners from that standpoint, in the fact that he handles all of the managerial type things, the purchasing, the overseeing the purchasing, and the hourly wage people calling in sick, whereas I'm just trying to make the phone ring 24/7. And so it's been a really good little partnership from that standpoint. We both kind of morphed from being phone answers. So whenever one of the employees complains about, oh, this job, blah blah blah, we did it, we did it, and I know that they're sick of hearing it, but we did. We've done all of them. So it's kind of a we've been there and done that. So Work your way up.
And he mentions Rich Benoit, the business partner. So the same app you're using right now, if you search Gill Athletics and Rich Benoit, Rich has been on the show.
Mm.
Don't ask why Rich was on before Matt. I don't want to get into that whole tug of
He's the
war.
boss.
Yeah.
He's the boss.
But fascinating story from Rich as well. Again, authenticity out the wazoo as far as being a hurdler, being a very good world-class hurdler, traveled the world hurdling for as long as he could step on that track. He went through and raced in the hurdles, and that's my favorite event. So I'm more partial to Rich than I am Matt. Although the multis are
Oh,
my maybe number two, maybe. I have a lot of respect for the cathletes and heptathletes of the world, of course. So,
fair enough.
one of the things I love this background. I love this. It's your dad. That's quite amazing. Your grandpa, for crying out loud, that's amazing. So I love that authenticity. One of the things that I really love about VS Athletics. Talk to me a little bit about this state meet series, this indoor. I mean, you guys kind of created this thing, and it's almost a labor of love. I mean, it's really cool because you're giving opportunities for kids to compete in California, and maybe in a type of track that they maybe wouldn't have if it weren't for you guys and the helpers that you have.
Sure. So a glaring weakness in the track schedule out here is that California doesn't have indoor track, and just quite frankly, because we don't need it. I put on a jacket last night because it got below 70 degrees when I went out to dinner. It was
I, I
miserable,
I
Mike.
think it's 17 outside, by the way, just so you're aware. Yes, yes. Keep going, keep going.
So Bob Fraley, the old coach, longtime guru at Fresno State, he had a donor who said, "I want to get you guys an indoor track." And so within Selland Arena, actually no, it was within their arena on campus where they play basketball. The only thing they could fit was a 160-yard banked track, and so what they had to do was it was 11 laps to the mile track. So what is that? I guess maybe that's 150 yards. But they wanted indoor track, and Bob, they fielded indoor track. They were one of the few California schools that did, and so they were tired of having to go to Flagstaff or and be back then, maybe even just University of Washington. I don't even know what was close back then.
Right.
So they had a nice little following of teams that would go up there and run meets, and then they would always put on a high school meet, like kind of that President's Day weekend in February. And essentially that track just started when Bob retired. It started to kind of fall out of favor. The university didn't question anything Bob did because he was a guru, and we're having that weekend. And well, then basketball started to take it over, and the track started to get stored outside. And we finally, Rich worked with Bob and said, "Hey, we'll put the meet on. Let us put the meet on. We want to keep it going. It's good for the kids to have an indoor exposure." And because California kids want to leave the state, they want to go and run indoor track. They want to go other places, and they're going to need some experience with it. So we put on that, and basically it was a series of all comers meets with a qualifying stand. So if you run under 9.0 in the 60-meter hurdles, you're in, and you pay your entry fee before you leave the meet at the all comers meet, and we show up at the meet. You get a T-shirt and a lane, and we run it off, and it's an all day thing. Well, that track, they stopped storing it inside; they stored it outside. It got basically dilapidated to the point where it was done. There have been probably 10 to 12 people I've heard over the years who wanted to buy it, us included. And Fresno State was haggling over, we want 150 grand, we want 200 grand. And people were saying, "You're not using it. Just here, we'll give you $1,000." It was going to cost 100 grand to remove it
Mm-hmm.
because it would require, I think, three different flatbeds.
Easily, yeah.
So it just nobody with big enough pockets decided they wanted to do it. So the meet is more from being inside the arena. It's called Save Mart Center. Inside the Save Mart Center to outdoor at Arcadia High School. And Arcadia is a good venue for us because Arcadia Invitational is the biggest meet in the Southland. Kids all want to get on that track, and so it was a logical thing for us to kind of reach out to Arcadia and put it on there. So I think there are about 20 qualifying meets now throughout the state of California, and get in here and get going, and you get the qualifying numbers. We'll see you that weekend, and we have at it. It's a long day, but it's cool. And so we don't call it an indoor championship. We call it the VS California Winter Championships.
Right.
All indoor distances and kind of cool stuff.
Yeah,
So
I just love the opportunity. We had one of the coaches from North Carolina who same thing that they all throughout the country
Yeah.
we don't have enough inventory of indoor facilities. So same thing in North Carolina. They're like, all right, we don't have enough indoor facilities, so we should still give our kids the opportunity to know what a
Hmm.
60-meter feels like and a 300 and things like that. And so they host these. They started calling them polar bear meets. While they're not indoor, at least the kids when they go to college, maybe for the first time, they aren't just completely floored that there's a 60 instead of 100 and things like that. So just creating opportunities, I think, is what is the real like what I love about what you guys are doing there, because it gives the kids the opportunity to not just have to wait until outdoor season. Gives again more opportunity, and I think that's a great thing for our sport.
Yeah, and both Rich and I had this vision about track and field. We both got into this knowing we weren't going to be millionaires or even, frankly, 100,000aires. We're just going to make a little bit of money, enough to survive, but we're in a sport that we love and we want to further the sport. And so, if we can present more opportunities and get some more of those football kids to run track and pull some kids out of baseball and into track in the springtime, that's a win for us. And so, we really are about trying to help the sport grow. Yeah, I mean, there's some money to be made in it, but that's not the driving force behind why we get out of bed every day.
Yeah, I love that. So we talked about grandpa, we talked about dad and his legacy, we talked about you and the things that you accomplished. You were Team USA. That's crazy. But it doesn't stop there.
Mm,
What
mm,
happens? Do we have little farmers running around doing track as well?
not so little
Not
farmers.
so little.
Yeah, both of them are pretty good. Josh just finished his college career, and JC is in the midst of hers at BYU. So, um, the younger one, JC, is a third year student running at BYU for Diljit. She was an 800, 1500, 800 miler in high school. Pretty, like 451 miler and a 211 800-meter runner. And she was fifth in the California State meet, large schools in cross country, ran
Okay.
1740 up at Woodward Park. She had a pretty good skill set, and her, she was a soccer player all growing up. She's 6'1" as an adult now, very, very tall. And so she was always a soccer player, the center forward growing up. And it was essentially kick the ball high to JC and she's going to head it in the goal. And so that attracted a lot of attention collegiately so she actually
Yeah.
committed to the University of Arizona as a freshman in high school to play for them.
Soccer.
And yeah, yeah. And this was before she'd ever even basically run a step of track in her life. And by the time the summer before her senior year came around, she said, "Boy, I don't know that I think I love track more than soccer. I think I need to tell the Arizona coach that I want to pursue track." And the handshake deal was always going to be, you can go run for Coach Harvey at Arizona, but we all know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
gonna
Right.
you're gonna get roped in, and then it's gonna be so. Um, so she set up an appointment to talk to him, and he said, "Oh, I've been meaning to talk to you. We have a conference call with all of the freshman signees for next year's team um, tomorrow morning." They had a Zoom call, and she said, "Okay." The Zoom call says, the coach says, "I've taken the job at University of Florida, so I'm letting all of you out of your letters of intent." And she was like,
Wow. I mean, it's a little bit like
"So,
a sign there too.
well, there is. I mean, there
Yeah.
is, but I mean, we went from basically having college paid for now to the start of senior year. We don't have a seat for her. The music has stopped. So I said, write down your list. Luckily I'm in this business, and so I said, write down your 10 schools that you want to go, that you think you want to run for, and I'll probably know six of them, and we'll just start the process here and let's go. And so one of the ones on the list was BYU. And I said, "Are you sure that's for you? We're not a, we don't go to church on Sunday. We're just not,
Yeah.
we're a strong family, but we don't,
Mhm.
not churchy. And especially don't know anything about the Latter-day Saints
Right.
community."
Hmm.
And she said that I just want to go somewhere where I'm in the middle of the pack, and I'm struggling to get to where I'm getting noticed. Like
Whoa, wait a minute.
yeah, I'd
Really?
love to get my butt kicked every day. And her
So
high
not
school scenario was, I led every interval and won.
yeah,
She didn't win every race, but she won, quite a few races. There were some really good girls in San Diego that
sure.
she had to race, but she wanted a training situation where she would get worked over on a daily basis. And so
Wow.
I reached out to Diljit, and she said, "Well, actually, we're having girls up for football recruiting weekend next weekend. Is she open?" And she worked it out with the cross country coach and went up, and Diljit called me that Monday and said, "I think she'll fit in here. I do." Because Diljit knows she's not LDS.
Right.
And so from an outsider's perspective, she said it's not for everybody. And she said, I'll be very blunt with you and very honest with you if I don't think she can handle it. She said, I'd love to have a girl with her talent level, just kind of as a throw in here, basically as a last minute recruit.
Yeah.
And so when Diljit talked about the finances that they could cover for her and the possibilities, JC signed with that signing period, and it was done like that.
I mean, a coach has to be like salivating when they hear, 450 in the mile. Let's be real here. That's good. I know there's faster, but there's a
Yeah,
lot slower as well. 450, completely legit here. And doesn't want to go to some place that, well, I'd like to be the number one kid, blah, blah, blah. I assume you hear that a lot from good kids and things like that. This kid wanted to be, I want to get my butt kicked, I think is the quote you said. Like, you got to think as a coach, like, oh, this kid must be tough. Like, you don't just do that and you're made of glass here. You must be tough, and that's the kind of kid I want to work with here. Holy cow.
super tough, super
Yeah.
tough. I don't know that I ever met a tougher kid. I mean, I can't tell you the things that she's dealt with in her 6 year, 7 year running career. And it's I'm so proud. What a
That's so
phenomenal
cool.
kid. And I probably have the numbers wrong. She might have run 453 in high school, but she was
It's
she was
same. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she finished. I think she was eighth in the state meet in California as a
Yeah.
freshman. Like
Yeah.
she was one of the ones kind of on the periphery of being a ringer. So she had a great little high school career, and has gone great. She's ended up running. She got fourth in the Big 12 in the 5K last year, and then she was indoors and outdoors. And then I think she was on their DMR that was I think they were second in the conference, and then they ended up winning the national title. She was the alternate. They subbed in somebody for her, but she's run 16:09 for 5K now and converted, and 4:17 in the 1500. So things are going really, really well. She's got a
Dude.
great group of girls to run with.
Holy,
Great.
that Big 12, it's a whole different conference and tough.
Yeah.
I was at the Big 12. David's son ran for Baylor,
Yeah.
and so I go for Ryan's senior year, and he's because of storms and all that, they don't race until literally
Hmm.
midnight. So I'm there, cheering. I've known him since he was a little kid, so I'm cheering him on, and he gets 10th or something like that, or maybe ninth, maybe he was one away from scoring. And well, there was a little bit of separation, and I was like, oh, it's a good race. He did run away. He PR'd. And then I started thinking, started looking at what the actual top eight were. That Big 12 is a distance conference, bro. So if she
Oh,
gets fifth in the 5,000, I mean, honestly, fifth place 5,000 on BYU's team, I guarantee you is really good.
yeah.
Fifth in that conference, that's
Yeah.
legit. That's so cool, man.
Yeah, so things are going her way. She had a little, she qualified for regionals last year and got hurt. So she had a little surgery. So she redshirted cross country and ended up winning the national title
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
couple weeks ago. She's going to redshirt indoors and then run outdoors. And the game plan is because of her height and her athleticism, she's going to steeplechase eventually. So
Oh,
that's kind of
sweet.
where her
That's
bread's going to get buttered.
That's the best distance event in my opinion. So it should
Yeah.
it should cap out there. It should be the 3,000 steeple, nothing
Easy.
longer.
You're not making any friends saying that.
I've said it many times and I'll keep saying it. I've seen some good 5,000 meter races. I really have. There's been some fun ones that, competitive and things like that. I can't think of a single 10,000. And that includes when I coached. And so I had kids, not that I coached them, but, we had kids in the 10,000. I was still like, no, I can't, I can't do this, guys. Ryan's was cool because I
Oh,
knew Ryan, but man, I've not. It's too many laps, bro. It's too many laps. Too many laps.
you missed out on Hampton Samuel, New Mexico, falls with 900 meters to go in the men's 10K last year at the NCAA meet. Gets up and wins the race. That was one of the best things I've seen in my 50 plus years of track.
He could have done it in a 1,000 meter race, and it would have been
Okay,
it would
fair
have been
enough.
as exciting, in my
That would have
opinion.
been
Yeah. Now the
okay.
steeple. Come on now.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the I love this perfect distance. I mean, 3,000 is really good, and obviously barriers and water in there makes it a lot of fun. Great, great, great race. Love that.
Sure.
You mentioned Diljit, by the way. Diljit's a podcast alum, number two most listened to episode we've ever had behind the Great Bushexnator. So again,
Hmm.
I would highly encourage you to go listen to Diljit. Great story, and I do
Hmm.
love. She's real. I don't know that
Oh,
she understands what sugar coating means. There is no sugar coating. She understands people and young people how to work with them, but you're going to get the truth from a Diljit Taylor. So
so
I
Mike, yeah,
love that.
think about that program. How you've got 17 girls that are the number one girl on their high school team coming in, and all of them are used to being baby. And she is incredible at making sure everyone understands it's team first. It's
Yep.
all about team. Their number one gal, Lexi, this year didn't run at regionals because of a very serious injury, and there was never a thought in Lexi's mind that I'm going to sit out the national meet. I'm running. It hurt, and it. I don't know exactly what the injury ended up being, but it's something rather serious. And
Wow.
she ran and finished the best she's ever finished in the national meet, and they won in a landslide.
Hmm.
It's she Dulce does an amazing job.
Yeah,
She
agreed.
really
Agreed.
does.
I love
She
what they
does.
do, and it was cool to see a double win, right? Like the men and the women win, like that. Just
Yeah.
and different coaches. It's not like the same coach. Like I just thought that was kind of cool, man. I just thought that was really interesting.
And 100% American kids
Yeah,
on those
yeah,
teams.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah. It was good. It was a
So
lot of fun.
so so that's JC, and then Josh, my
Yeah,
my oldest, is he just turned 25 2 days ago.
nice.
He is on the staff now with Steve Rainbolt at Wichita State. Just took
Yeah,
a job being Rainbolt's assistant multi coach and Heidi's assistant jump coach. So
yeah,
he's been there since October 1 and loving it. And they've got a great group. I think there are 11 multi-eventers in the group. So
wow.
it's a pretty phenomenal group. And basically Rainbow either takes the guys and gives Josh the girls, or takes the girls and gives Josh the guys, or takes half the event and says, Josh, you go deal with the shot. I'll deal with the discus guys today. So he's learning from a guru. Steve Rainbow's tree,
Yeah,
coaching tree is as phenomenal as there is anywhere in this country. And so if that's the path he decides he wants to go down as an adult, he's in a great place to start. So he just graduated from UC Irvine. He got his master's,
yeah,
an MBA, and Irvine luckily put up with him for 5 years, and he graduated there with that MBA, and he was a three-time All-American in the decathlon for the
yeah,
Anteaters, and ended up scoring 77.03. He made the trials, and then by virtue of his finish at the trials and some other amazing things, he got to be on the Thorpe Cup team. So he got to go to Germany this summer and wear Team USA on his chest.
wow.
Pretty cool summer. Pretty great way to end things. And so
What's it like? First of all, quick plug again, Steve Rainbolt, Gill Podcast alum. Go listen to his story as well. What's it like? My kids are eighth grade and fifth grade, and are starting to have some accolades in their own little things that they do. My little girl has got all state in choir and things like that, and my son has been all state for middle school for bass fishing of all things. He's addicted.
what?
Oh yeah, he's addicted, completely addicted, which I love it. It's awesome. I mean, it's his whole life. Um, but to see your kids, I mean, you knew these kids when they were in diapers and they couldn't pick up a spoon to feed themselves, and now they're representing Team USA, and they're on a squad and contributing to a squad that wins national titles and gets all Americans. You yourself were a good athlete. Your dad, I mean, there's a lineage there. I mean, just what is that like as a dad? I can't, like, I can't even wrap my head around it yet, even at this age and stage of where I am in fatherhood.
It's excruciating. It's so much more nerve-wracking than when you do it yourself. You're
Ah,
in control. There's no control as a parent. And all you ever want from the time these kids are little is A, I want them to like what they're doing
mhm.
athletically. B, I want them to have some success.
Right,
And and C, I want them to make friends while doing it.
right.
And both of them have had a ton of that. But as far as the nail biting and the parenting, it's brutal. It is just an absolutely excruciating experience. And you know, the JC, my daughter was kind of a man child from the time she was little. She was always the biggest kid by a head, and so there was not really ever going to be an issue there. But Josh was, he was me. He was a skinny little guy and
Uh-huh.
really good little athlete, but just not the biggest kid, not the strongest kid, not the fastest kid, but a really good athlete. And then as he got to be 19, 20, 21 years old, and muscle started to happen, and technique started to, he got some real coaching instead of listening to his dad. Things really started to take off, and it's been so much fun to watch.
What kind of observer dad are you as the kids were as he was competing and now she is competing? Are you the nervous Nelly? Are you the quiet sit at the very top and let everything happen? Do you try to get involved as far as like talking during the not during the event, but in between events? What kind of dad are you? Because you've seen and you've been around a lot of other great coaches and things like that. So this ain't just some dad off the street. You know what's going on here. What kind of dad are you on that?
So the guy at the NCAA meet that you can hear from the other side of the bleachers that screams, "Move!"
Yes.
I don't know who that is, but he's everywhere. I'm not that loud,
Okay,
but
okay.
I'm probably the second loudest guy. And it's
Is that right?
um yeah, I mean as a cheerleader though, not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
my son, he used to sleep like this, so we called him Super J. His name's Josh. We called him Super J from a very early age, and so I've always abbreviated that to Soup. So I would yell Soup from wherever I was sitting if he was throwing the discus and I'm on the other side. But I'm probably louder than the average parent for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit embarrassing for the kids, but my heart's in the right place, I think.
Yeah. Hey, when you're parents, come on, you get a lot of grace of like, well, you've been through a lot with
Mm,
this 20-year-old or whatever, whatever age
mm,
they're at. You've been through the ups and downs, and there's plenty of both of those
hmm.
as a parent, man. Well, that's cool, man. That's there's successes both academically and athletically and socially. You don't bear all the fruits of it, but you're a leader for them. I mean, they got to see leadership from you and the family as far as what's the right thing to do and the right things to pursue. And so it's a great example of you and what you do and how you conduct yourself, looking at the successes that your kids have had and will have. They're not done. He's going to go on and do some great
Yeah.
things in coaching, and she's going to continue doing some amazing things athletically. So kudos to you, Dad, man. It's not easy. I know it. Like I said, I'm in the thick of it at this age, and at those ages, you've been through my ages that I'm at with my kids. So kudos to you, man. That's really cool. It's a great example for a guy like me on fatherhood, brother. Really is.
Yeah, wouldn't change it for the world. It's been a pretty amazing deal.
I love it. I love it. It's hard to pivot from that subject, but I am. What I'm curious about here, Matt, you have gotten to do a lot of cool things. We need to talk a little bit about some of the ESPN things you've done as well that, kind of go along with that
Mm.
theme of the journalism that you've done. But you've got to be at a lot of different meets, Olympic trials and things like that, and other meets. And you've got to see a bunch of different athletes. You've got to see athletes that, maybe you barely kind of recognize who they were and they ended up becoming gold medalists and stuff like that. What's been like when you think about all these memories of track and field that you have been able to see, what's been like what's one or two like just top memories of like, oh man, I got to see this or that happen in front of me, or I was there when this happened? What's kind of some of the like, boy, I kind of pinch myself, can't believe I was there to see that.
As a track fan, probably the '84 Olympics was the pinnacle of my track and field world. Getting to see Carl Lewis and those type
Mm,
of things. That was a pretty amazing Olympic Games.
yeah.
And I was there for Gabrielle Anderson Scheiss, the marathoner finishing staggering across the last 100 meters, and those are just kind of things that stick out in your mind. And I was 15 at that point, so I wasn't necessarily all sold on track. I still thought I was going to be some basketball player. Um, Luckily, I got smart in a hurry, but that was probably the highlight of track and field for me, the '84 games. And then stuff with my kids is just
Mm,
is I know what my daughter went through, and to get fifth in the California State meet in cross country was pretty amazing, and something I'm super proud of her for being able to do. And Josh getting to wear Team USA stuff in Germany was an amazing experience, and just something he'll remember for the rest of his life. And I'm so happy that they figured out a way to get him on the team. And my man Kevin Reed pulled
mm.
pulled some strings there, and Josh qualified. And so it's those are probably the highlights for me as far as the track world goes. Yeah.
Boy, you're just throwing it on thick on this good dad thing because I know you've been around world records. You've seen those happen. You've seen gold medalists walk right next to you. You've talked and maybe even become friends with some gold medalists and things like that. And yet, besides the '84 Olympics, which we're of a similar age here, Matt. That's the that's what got me into track. It was watching the '84 Olympics as well. So it's a kind of a iconic Olympics of all the other ones that I've seen, and amazing things have happened. '84 still sticks out
Hmm.
for lots of reasons, and yet your highlights are, oh man, watching my son, watching my daughter cross country in fifth place, and my son that's your highlights. That's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
You're such a good dad, dude. I swear.
Yeah, it's funny. I think back about my dad when he was a world class or national class swimmer at the age of about 16, and he hadn't made a decision whether he was going to be a track guy or a swimmer at that point. And at the 56 Olympic trials, his dad drove him down. They were in Northern California. His dad drove him down to the Coliseum to watch the 56, and Charlie Dumas was the first man to clear 7 feet in the high jump. And from that moment on, my dad never swam again. He said, "This track is what I'm doing. This is the most amazing thing in the world." So when I called my dad on a payphone when I first jumped 7 feet for the first time, he's
Oh,
never cried in front of me, but that was a teary moment. He said, "I cannot believe you just told me that." Like that was the moment in his life that changed, made him into a track person for life.
well, and think about that. He saw 7 feet, which was magic. I mean, that's a barrier, right? And that's the first guy to see. He saw like no one jumped 7 feet, and now I saw the very first one, and now my son jumps it. I, I mean, I don't even know if that's full circle. That's like unbelievable. It's like, wait,
Yeah,
no one jumped 7 feet, and I didn't know my future son would be one that would jump 7 feet. That's so cool, man. That's what makes this sport magical. I don't think other sports have the plethora of stories that can happen like we do. That's amazing to me. It really is.
yeah. Well, thank God for rubber takeoff runways and
Yeah,
magic
yeah,
shoes.
yeah. A little different from when the first guy did it. Sure, sure, sure. I get
Yeah.
it. I get it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The crossbar was a little bit more forgiving as well. Yeah, yeah. There's
Oh,
there's a lot. Yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah. For sure, for sure.
those steel triangle crossbars. Ah.
I still don't know like who invented that and thought that was a good idea. Like, hey,
Well,
let's make it a triangle. Oh, and metal, by the way. I don't know
that's
who.
a that's a testament to our man Harry Gill. I think he came up
You
with that
think
horrible
so?
idea,
Yeah,
and then he just got smarter as he went along.
yeah. I never wanted to pin it on Harry because I was like, that's just a bad idea.
Oh,
Of course, what else were the alternatives back then? But then I'm like, well, there weren't a lot of people doing that kind of stuff back then when Harry was doing it either. So it probably was Harry Gill. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, God rest his soul. All right, Matt, wrap us up here. So today you serve as the national sales manager, serving coaches around the country, around the world, in track and field equipment. What's the future look like, man? What do you get? What's got you excited here for the next season coming up, or the next couple of seasons, whatever, however you define future? What's got you excited?
well, immediately on the horizon is you and I are both going to meet up in Orlando on Sunday night here and have a week at the Sam Seamsathon, U.S. Track and Field Cross Country Coaches Association convention. It's always the highlight of my year. Like you
Agreed.
mentioned, it is a year for you too.
Yep.
Having the majority of your college clients and friends and peers and people you want to meet all in one roof at one time is a pretty amazing situation. And Sam's a genius for being able to pull this off.
Great job.
Um, yeah, and we might get to sniff and see Tiger Woods and Charlie Woods and John Daly and Little
That's
John
right.
and all that stuff too. So yeah, that's on the immediate horizon. And then I'm just super looking forward to outdoor season and kind of seeing how the Wichita State Shockers can get things done
Yeah.
for my son coaching and then obviously my BYU Cougars now with JC going to run some outdoor track. So I'm just super excited about the things here coming up in the springtime. We've got a bunch of good track meets coming up. Our VS series starts Saturday. The outdoors, the winter championships, the first meets are this Saturday. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So we've got that brewing. So yeah, things are good, man.
I love
And,
it.
and I don't know about you, but post Olympic year is always there's a little bit more track and field buzz
Yeah.
because kids watch it on TV and go, I want to do that next
Yeah.
year. I want to be the next Usain Bolt, or
Yep.
I want to be the next Gout or whatever the
Yeah.
whatever the
Yeah.
new hot name is, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm super excited to see what this track season holds. It should be a good one.
Well, I just thought about this. I agree with you, and then as you were saying that, I was thinking like, oh, well, maybe we get it extended this time because 28 is LA. How? I mean, you're going to be kind of in the muck in the middle of all this going on with LA 28. Have they started putting up Olympic rings everywhere yet, or what's going on there?
Luckily for me, I will spend a heck of a lot of time in Los
That's
Angeles.
true. That's right. That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
See, I still have some hair left. It would be all gone if I did.
Yeah.
It's um, Yeah, it's kind of we're trying to figure out where the trials are going to be. Have they awarded the trials yet to either Eugene
Uh,
or somewhere in LA? It seems every time the meet's been in America, the trials have been where the games.
right. The last I heard
So,
was that it's going to be in Eugene, but like right after somewhere I heard that and said that I think Max came out, or maybe the chairman of the LA 28 came out and said, no, we are committed to having the trials in LA. But have you heard how they're creating the track for LA 28?
hmm hmm
I mean, that's just bonkers. If you haven't heard, Google it. It is bonkers what they're doing. It also makes complete sense when you know the LA landscape and that there is no land out there anymore. So it's crazy what they have to do. So they can't have the trials on that because of timing and everything. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where that actually ends up. My feeling is because it's where it's been for the last, feels like 20 of them, but I know that's not true. It'll be in Eugene. I just, that's just my feeling of what
Hey,
is
and
going to
look,
happen.
it ain't broken, Eugene. There's no need
Yeah,
to fix it.
I was gonna
Eugene
say,
is absolutely wonderful.
I was gonna say, I'm a little bit of a Eugene apologist for many, many reasons. I'm okay with that as well, going to Eugene. But
Sure,
um,
selfishly, would I love the trials to be held at at one of the venues here in
yeah,
Southern California? Yeah, we could roll our truck up and open it up and sell shoes and spikes and batons and stopwatches and
right, right,
everybody
right.
and their brother. It'd be very easy to open up the store and make it mobile. But
Yeah,
if it's there's going to be a huge buzz no matter what.
yeah.
So things will be getting good here over the next 3 years.
I imagine our friends at Mount Sac will have something to say about this Olympic trials as well. In fact, they're hosting D2 nationals coming up here in the next cycle as well, so that'll be exciting to have at that great facility as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. Matt Farmer, thank you so much, man. I love authenticity. That is one of my like hallmarks of like I can get into things that are authentic. And the Farmer family. I mean, I thought it started with dad. I didn't realize this went back to grandpa here. I certainly knew it went through past you with your children and how they're doing. And it's just so exciting to see what you've done in this sport. And I don't mean just athletically, although you have 7 foot high jumper. Let's not kid ourselves. That's pretty freaking good. 7,000 points in the decathlon is also really stinking good. But what you've done coaching you've affected young people in a very positive manner of being their coaches. You have kids that you coach who have gone on to do things in our industry and that go on and coach now. That's amazing. That's a fingerprint of what you put onto our sport. Your journalism, what you do some things with ESPN TV as well when we do the NCAA champs and stuff like that. I still call it the indoor series, but the VS winter series. I mean, those again, these are just parts of the puzzle that moves our sport forward in a very positive manner. And so it's really cool to see that, we see those things on the internet, but now to actually hear from one of the guys that actually does it and puts in the blood, sweat, and tears, that's really cool, man. It's really exciting. I'm really glad to be able to share your journey with our listeners today.
Yeah, Mike, and I appreciate you having me on. This podcast has been a really cool addition to the track and field world. Like you said, kind of moving the bits forward, moving the little bits and pieces forward of track and field, and you're a huge part of that. So thanks for having me, and I'll see you in Orlando this
That's
weekend,
right,
huh?
baby. That's right. Well, I appreciate you saying that, man. Hey, and guys, so track and field, you need track and field equipment, Gill track and field equipment. Just Google VS Athletics. It's really that simple. Or you can always message me, and I'll give you Matt's personal home phone number. I'm not afraid. I'll give it to you, and you can call him at any time. The crazy thing is he'll answer. I know how he does it. He never stops working. So he lives in the city that doesn't sleep. I think that's what we call Las Vegas. But he'll get you taken care of. He's one of the best and one of my close friends. And I'm really grateful to be able to call him friend. So thank you so much for being here this week. Join us next week. We'll have another coach on the podcast and have some fun. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.